Hi folks, welcome back again to Mr. Times Classics channel. Today we're back in Athens checking out the central marketplace known as the Agora. Let's go straight into it. So the Agora is located here in the northwest of the city, with the Areopagus just behind it to the south here, and the Acropolis over here as well, reminding the Athenians always that their patron deity Athena is ever present. The Agora is the Athenian central marketplace, but there's so much more going on in this location than just trading. The Agora is a mix of religious, political, legal and commercial buildings altogether. But we will start with trade, as this was pretty important to the identity of the Agora. And we can see all of these stalls around the centre of the marketplace itself. These stalls would have been broken up into all sorts of different categories, such as food in one area, textiles in another, perhaps pottery somewhere else. There's a famous quote from the comedic playwright Eubulus that tells us what we might expect to find in the Agora, which I'll put up on the screen now. Note how we've got the inclusion of all sorts of different things here in the Agora in this quotation as well. So not just the commercial elements, but things like the summoners, the witnesses, the lawsuits and those sort of things. There were several officials that patrolled the Agora, known as the agronomoi. These were put in place to maintain order. They would settle disputes, for example, about payments or supervise the quality of the goods, and they collected a necessary tax. So the first building we come to is this. It's called a stoa. A stoa is essentially a colonnade with a roof over the top of it to create some shade. And sometimes there would be rooms off to the side. These could be used for all sorts of different things, meeting places, banquet halls, lessons for tutoring and philosophy might come here. There are several of these stoae in the Athenian Agora, and indeed in Greek markets in general we would expect to find some. This one is called the Southern Stoa, and it's the largest in the Agora. It runs about 80 metres in length, and it has either 15 or 16 of these rooms off the side. That's debated a little bit. These rooms would be used, as I say, for things like banqueting for the magistrates. Officials of the weights and measures would meet here as well. And there's even evidence that one room might have been used as a shrine. Other stoae could be used for similar functions, perhaps even for people to get out the hot Mediterranean sun. So I'm now stood in front of the monument of the Eponymous heroes. And this was built to honour particular Athenian heroes from whom the 10 tribes of Athens took their name. So the heroes honoured here are Erechtheus, Aegeus, Pandion, Les, Acamas, Enos, Kirkops II, Hippothune, Ajax and Antiochus. I'll talk more about these tribes later on. But essentially this area was a notice board in Athens. It's where all the laws and decrees would be posted up for people to read what was going on and really get to grips with the current affairs that were going on in the city. So just off from the monument of the Eponymous heroes, we have this building here known as the Heliaia. This is one of the most significant law courts in Athens. It had about 6,001 members, who were each chosen as lot to be a juror during that year. So that's 600 members from each of the 10 tribes of Athens. They're paid to take part in the judiciary process. This court saw civil and penal cases. Bigger cases relating to things such as murder, for example, would usually take place on this hill here, the Areopagus. This court was basically open nearly every day of the month, so we can see how central law trials were to what's going on in Athens. The fact that it's in the Agora tells you how significant that judiciary process is to the Athenians. It's right in their central sort of hub. So we now turn our attention to a really important political building known as the Bouleuterion. This is where the Athenian council, known as the Bull, would meet. The council was made up of 500 members from the Athenian tribes. Essentially, Athens and Attica is split into 10 different tribes, and each tribe would send 50 representatives, and they would meet here to set the agenda that the assembly, or the ecclesia, would discuss that day. The ecclesia is where all Athenian male citizens would meet on the hill called the Pnyx to discuss and vote on all sorts of different matters. That is located just behind the Areopagus, up on that hill in the far distance where my cursor is over there. And I'll do a video on that another time. So the members of the Bull, as I say, were selected by lot. And this was done using a machine called a Bouleuterion. This was essentially a stone slab with rows of slots on it. And a tube would randomly feed different coloured dye to each of the slots. Kind of reminds me a little bit like it's ancient Plinko. And depending on the colour of the dye that landed in the slot, denoted whether or not you'd been chosen or selected to be part of the ball. I've put one of these up on the screen now that you can see. I did my undergraduate degree at Reading University, and they have an excellent reconstruction of these right outside their year museum, so that's what I'm showing here. To the left of the Bouleuterion, we have this circular building here, which is called a tholos. This was actually the Prytaneion, where the ball was essentially led by a group called the Prytanei. This is essentially one of the tribes. 50 representatives from one of the tribes would lead the ball for a tenth of the month before it moved on to the next tribe. And this is where they would reside, in this building here. The leader of the Prytanei was changed every day until the term of that tribe had come to its end. They officially called the meetings the ball and the assembly. And also the weights and measures table was held in here. So this is where people would go to assess quantity and quality of what it was that they were buying. So I'm now making my way up to one of the most significant religious buildings in the Agora. And this was the Temple of Hephaestion. Now I can't really get any closer to it in the game as it's really heavily guarded. And then they just follow me around as I try and explore the rest of the Agora. But this is one of the best preserved temples in the whole of the Greek world, and that's thanks to its Christian conversion later on. As I say, it's dedicated to Hephaestus, who's the god of the forge and craftsman. And so it links back to the idea of the Agora selling people wares and crafts. Inside there's also a statue to Athena Hephaestia, that honours Athena as her patron deity of arts. The pediments of this temple would have shown the birth of Athena on the east side, and on the west side we have Hephaestus' return from Olympus. The decoration inside would allegedly show all sorts of different mythological events, but particularly focused on Theseus, the Athenians' local hero. And it got the name the Hephaestion, and at one point it's thought it was just a temple dedicated to him until more archaeological excavation was done. It overlooks the Agora from this hill known as the Kolonos Agoris hill. So I've managed to sneak into the temple, ignore all the dead bodies. Love that move. And we can see here that there's not much really on show to us about Theseus. We have some statues of Athena here which are pretty generic throughout the game. We have some of the paintings on the wall, which I can't really work out what they're depicting. If you know, do drop it in the comments. I'm wondering if there's anything related to the labours of Theseus in these, but it's hard to tell. Oops. But yeah, not too much for us to see. So just down from the Temple of Hephaestus, we have another temple in the Agora, located here. It looks more like a treasury to me, but this is the Temple of Apollo Patroos. That means Apollo of the Fathers. It's a small temple that was actually ruined by the Persians during their invasion of the Greek world between 480 to 479 BC. And after their invasion only the altar remained. It was later rebuilt in the 3rd century BC. And Apollo is honoured in this way as he is the father of Ion, one of the ancestors of the Ionian Greeks. And that's one of the 4 major tribes in the ancient period that make up the Greek world. That's not one of the tribes that makes up Athens, but rather a tribe that makes up the whole of the Greek world. So down from the Temple of Apollo Patroos, we see this building here with 2 porches over on the right and left, and this is another Stoa. This was the Stoa of Zeus, and it honoured Zeus with the epithet Zeus Eleutherius, which means Zeus of freedom. It's interesting, as Stoae weren't typically used for religious purposes. This Stoa seems to be established after the Battle of Plataea in 479 BC and celebrates Greek freedom from the Persian threat. According to Pausanias, the shields of those who died fighting for Athens were displayed in this area. Meniscles is the architect that's responsible for this Stoa, and he's also responsible for the Propylaea that you can see on top of the Acropolis. I'm now looking at another religious monument here, and this is called the Altar of the 12 Gods. The exact 12 gods that this honours is a bit disputed, but it's probably the 12 main Olympian gods. It was set up in 522 to 521 BC by Pisistratus the Younger. He's the grandson of a former tyrant in Athens before Cleisthenes brought in a load of democratic reforms. This is the 0 point from where all distances in Athens are measured. It's also a really important place for supplication. For example, the people of Plataea came here to ask the Athenians for help against Thebes. And it's also a place of refuge for mistreated slaves. They would often congregate here and seek safety. So from the altar of the 12 gods, we come to another Stoa. This is called the Painted Stoa, or the Stoa Poikile. It was a meeting place for people to come together. Indeed, at the start of the Eleusinian Mysteries, people would gather here, as it's conveniently located on this route called the Sacred Way, that goes from the Dipylon gates up here, up over there to Eleusis, and further on into Attica, where a famous festival is celebrated. The Sacred Way also leads up, all the way up to the Acropolis through the Propylaea. As the name suggests, there's famous paintings that are displayed here. So, scenes that were shown here was the Battle of Oine, which was a battle during the First Peloponnesian War. The Amazonomachy, which is the Amazonians versus the Greeks. We have the Fall of Troy, and also the Battle of Marathon, all displayed here. The philosopher Zeno used this stoa to begin his school of philosophy, and he called his school of philosophy Stoicism. So that obviously links to its humble origins of starting in a stoa. So the last building we're looking at here is the Athenian Mint, and this is where they cast and stored their coins. I've read that it was only bronze coins that were made and stored here, though Athens was famously reliant on silver as well, so perhaps there are other mints elsewhere that cast other coins in other parts of the city. So that concludes our video here on the Athenian Agora. Thanks so much for watching the video. As ever, do drop us a like and subscribe, it really does help the channel grow, and I'll see you guys all in the next one.